What if you are asking God for direction while quietly refusing every answer except the one that keeps the relationship alive? Let me ask you plainly. If the answer were separation, would you still want God to speak? If the answer were wait, would you still call him faithful? If there were no immediate reassurance, no message, no reunion, no dramatic sign, would you remain open to truth? Be careful now. Intense prayer does not always mean an open heart. You can pray passionately and still be negotiating. You can cry, fast, and repeat the same petition while fear has already decided which verdict you will accept. At that point, you are not seeking direction. You are seeking confirmation. Write that down. Confirmation asks truth to support desire. Guidance submits desire to truth. Consider a courtroom. Your desire has a right to testify. Your memories may testify. Your loneliness may testify. But desire cannot be the witness, the attorney, and the judge. If it controls the entire proceeding, the verdict was chosen before the evidence entered the room. That is not discernment. That is attachment wearing spiritual clothing. Some of you are not merely afraid of losing a person. You are afraid of being alone. You feel guilty because you promised to stay. You remember the beginning and keep using yesterday's tenderness to excuse today's pattern. Or perhaps you have invested so much time that releasing the relationship feels like admitting the investment did not produce the future you expected. But time invested does not turn confusion into purpose. Nostalgia is not evidence. Guilt is not authority. Fear is not qualified to govern your future. Everybody say truth before preference. Clarity begins when truth becomes more valuable than the future you imagined. Until then, every silence will feel like permission to keep hoping, and every coincidence will be recruited as a sign. The obstacle may not be that God has refused to answer. The obstacle may be that attachment has already answered for him. So we are going to examine 5 things: motive, evidence, peace, counsel, and obedient response. Motive reveals what you are protecting. Evidence reveals what is consistently happening. Peace must be tested against truth. Counsel interrupts private distortion. Obedience proves whether you truly wanted guidance. But before we test the relationship, we must define the purpose of prayer itself. What is prayer for direction actually supposed to accomplish? Prayer for direction is one of the most misunderstood practices in the life of faith. Many people think they are asking for guidance when they are actually asking for permission. What is confirmation seeking? It is the practice of collecting anything that supports the conclusion you already prefer. A dream agrees with you, so you keep it. A warning challenges you, so you dismiss it. One person tells you to wait, and suddenly that person is wise. 3 people tell you to face the facts, and now none of them understands the connection. Interesting, isn't it? That is not discernment. That is selective hearing with religious vocabulary. Guidance is different. Guidance is receiving enough truth to take the next responsible step, even when you cannot see the entire road. You keep asking God to show you the next 10 years. He may be confronting what you must do by Friday. You want the whole map because you hope some distant possibility will excuse present disobedience. Listen to the difference between these prayers. God, change this person so I can keep the relationship. God, reassure me now because uncertainty is painful. Then there is the mature prayer. God, show me what is true, expose what I am refusing to see, and give me courage to do what truth requires. The first prayer attempts to control another person. The second demands relief from discomfort. The third submits the petitioner to wisdom. Suppose you hire an advisor, place the facts before her, and say, please counsel me, but understand that I will accept only your approval. You are not seeking counsel. You are recruiting an accomplice. You do not want judgment. You want authorization. And many people approach prayer the same way. They keep presenting the petition, but the acceptable ruling has already been written. More signs will not cure an unwilling heart. 10 more coincidences cannot provide the qualification that surrender refuses to supply. Now, surrender does not mean that you stop feeling. It does not mean becoming passive, careless, or indifferent. Your desire may be sincere. Your grief may be deep. Your hope may be understandable. But emotion is information, not authority. It may enter the discussion. It may not govern the decision. Say this aloud. My desire is real, but my desire is not sovereign. Again, I do not need the whole future. I need enough truth for the next responsible step. That is guidance. Not permission, not prediction, not emotional anesthesia. Guidance prepares you to act responsibly under truth. And once guidance has been defined, the first matter before the court is not the conduct of the other person. It is the motive of the person praying. So let us examine the petitioner. What exactly are you asking God to say? Be specific. Do you want reconciliation? An apology? Renewed access? Assurance that the person will change? Or do you simply want the uncertainty to end because waiting has become uncomfortable? Vague prayers protect hidden motives. Specific prayers expose them. Take a page and complete 2 statements. First, what I want God to say is. Second, what I fear will happen if He does not say it is. Do not write the respectable answer. Write the honest one. Perhaps you fear being alone. Perhaps you fear beginning again. Perhaps you fear people will think the relationship failed. Perhaps you cannot bear the thought that all your patience, forgiveness, and investment did not produce the future you expected. Now we are reaching the real petition. The question is not merely, do I love this person? The question is, what am I protecting by holding on? You may be protecting familiarity. You may be protecting an identity built around being needed. You may be protecting your reputation as the one who never gives up. Or you may be protecting yourself from the silence that comes when a painful relationship is no longer present to occupy your attention. Familiarity is powerful. Something can feel like home because it resembles what you have known, not because it is healthy. If rejection shaped your past, you may become desperate to prevent rejection in the present. If inconsistency trained your emotions, uncertainty may feel exciting, deep, even spiritual. But familiar does not mean assigned. Intense does not mean right. And compassion must be disciplined by truth. You may care about another person's pain without accepting responsibility for their choices. You may understand their history without becoming the manager of their emotions. You may pray for their transformation without making your future dependent upon it. Listen carefully. Love can offer support, but love cannot perform another person's repentance. Love cannot accept accountability on their behalf. Love cannot manufacture character for someone who refuses responsibility. So here is the surrender question. If truth contradicts your preference, are you willing to stop arguing with it? Do not answer quickly. Let that question search you. This examination is not condemnation. God does not expose a hidden fear merely to humiliate you. Honest examination removes secret pressure from the decision. Once you can name the fear no longer has to speak from behind the curtain and pretend to be guidance. Say it aloud. I can face what is influencing me. Good. Now your desire has been identified. Your fear has been named, and your motive can no longer operate anonymously. But motive only explains why you want a particular answer. It cannot establish whether the relationship is healthy. For that, the court must examine the evidence. Now we examine the evidence, not the speech, not the promise, not the potential, the evidence. Ask a different question. What does this relationship repeatedly produce? Does it produce honesty, responsibility, mutual respect, and greater stability? Or does it repeatedly produce confusion, fear, blame, diminished confidence, and the exhausting need to explain what should already be clear? Take another page and draw 2 columns. In the first column, write what was said. In the second, write what happened afterward. They said, I am sorry. What happened afterward? They said, I understand. What happened afterward? They said, I will change. What happened afterward? That second column is where character gives testimony. An apology may begin an inquiry, but it does not complete a transformation. The question is not whether the person became emotional. The question is whether they became responsible. Do they accept correction without turning your concern into an attack against them? Does respect remain when you say no? When they do not receive what they want, do they honor your boundary or punish you for having one? Understand the distinction. An imperfect person may fail. Admit the failure. Accept consequences. And practice a different response over time. Growth is not instant, but it becomes observable. A destructive pattern does something else. It apologizes when access is threatened, shifts blame when accountability arrives, and returns to the same conduct when the crisis has passed. One powerful conversation cannot erase a repeated pattern. Tears are real, but tears are not a record of change. Promises may be sincere in the moment, but sincerity without consistency cannot sustain trust. Now ask yourself another uncomfortable question. Who must I become to keep this relationship functioning? Must you become smaller, quieter, less honest? Must you remain anxious, apologize constantly, abandon your priorities, or pretend that disrespect did not happen? If peace exists only when you surrender your voice, that is not mutual peace. That is compliance. And please understand forgiveness properly. Forgiveness concerns what you carry in your heart. Trust concerns what another person has demonstrated with their conduct. Access concerns what wisdom permits them to reach. These are related, but they are not identical. You can release vengeance without restoring the same level of trust. You can remain compassionate without removing every consequence. A clean heart does not require an unlocked door. And if the record includes threats, coercion, stalking, physical danger, or fear for your safety, do not keep waiting for a more spiritual sign. Move toward protection. Contact qualified support and trusted people who can help you act safely. Danger is not a test of how much suffering you can absorb. Say this with me. Words may open an inquiry, but consistency determines credibility. Again, I will not judge character by one moment when time has supplied a pattern. Now you possess a method. You can separate who you hope someone might become from who their conduct consistently shows them to be. Evidence establishes what has been happening. But evidence is not the end of the struggle. The heart may still feel sudden relief when connection returns and then call that relief peace. So next, we must learn the difference. Here is where many sincere people become confused. Distance creates anxiety. Anxiety creates craving. Then a message arrives, an apology is offered, or attention returns, and suddenly the body relaxes. The pressure drops. You can breathe again. And because you feel better, you conclude, this must be peace. Not necessarily. Relief is the reduction of immediate emotional pressure. Peace is inner steadiness that does not require you to deny what is true. Relief says, the discomfort has stopped. Peace says, I can remain truthful even while discomfort continues. Write that distinction down. A person can send one affectionate message and calm the fear of abandonment without correcting the conduct that caused the separation. A beautiful memory can make you forget for a moment why the boundary became necessary. Renewed attention can satisfy attachment while leaving dishonesty, disrespect, or irresponsibility untouched. If a bank temporarily stops calling you, that does not mean the debt disappeared. Silence reduced the pressure. It did not change the account. In the same way, emotional relief may change how the moment feels without changing what the relationship is producing. But now we must be balanced. Discomfort is not automatically proof that something is wrong. Sometimes old wounds make healthy honesty feel threatening. If you have experienced rejection, a reasonable boundary may feel like abandonment. If you have lived with inconsistency, stable affection may feel unfamiliar and therefore suspicious. Fear can misinterpret safety just as attachment can misinterpret danger. So what do? We apply the coherence test. Does the peace you claim agree with the evidence? Does it agree with honorable conduct? Does it permit responsibility, truth, and mutual respect? Can you remain honest and still keep it? Or does peace exist only when you stop asking questions, lower the boundary, excuse the pattern, and become agreeable again? Peace that depends upon your silence is not peace. It is a ceasefire purchased with your voice. This is why mature people practice the pause principle. When emotion reaches its highest point, do not rush to make the most permanent decision. Pray, rest, reflect, observe. Let the emotional weather move through before you redesign the house. Sometimes you need a night of sleep more than another hour of analysis. Yes, even spiritual people need sleep. A pause is not avoidance. It creates space for perspective to return and for conduct to reveal whether the moment represents change or merely reaction. Say this aloud. Immediate calm is not my final authority. Again, my peace must agree with truth. You are learning to feel deeply without allowing feeling alone to issue the verdict. But private emotion is clever. It can argue for staying today and leaving tomorrow. Therefore, mature discernment must admit another witness into the process. Trustworthy counsel. Counsel becomes necessary because emotional investment reduces objectivity. When you desperately want one outcome, you can interpret every fact through the appetite of that desire. You do not always need another sign. Sometimes you need another set of honest eyes. But choose those eyes carefully. Trustworthy counsel is not merely someone who likes you, agrees with you, or dislikes the person you are discussing. It is someone mature enough to value truth, responsibility, and your well-being more than the story you prefer. A wise counselor will comfort you, yes, but will not use comfort to help you avoid reality. Now watch this tendency. You tell one person the story, and they advise caution. You tell another, and they ask you to examine the pattern. You keep retelling it, changing a detail here, emphasizing a tender moment there, until somebody finally says, go back. Then you announce, I have confirmation. No. You have collective permission. An echo returns your own sound. A mirror shows you what is present. Counsel must be a mirror, not an echo. When you seek help, present observable facts. Do not begin with a diagnosis or a dramatic label. Explain what was said, what was done, what happened repeatedly, and how each person responded to accountability. Include your own mistakes. If you conceal your conduct to protect your conclusion, you are not asking for wisdom. You are managing the witness. Give your counselor 4 questions. Write them down. What pattern do you see? What am I minimizing? What responsibility belongs to me? What boundary would wisdom require? Those questions bring balance. The first identifies repetition. The second exposes denial. The third prevents self-righteousness. The fourth turns insight into responsible action. But counsel is not control. No pastor, friend, relative, mentor, or professional should become a substitute for prayer, conscience, sound judgment, and your responsibility to decide. Mature counsel strengthens your agency. Manipulative influence replaces it. How can you recognize the difference? Honest counsel permits questions. It can explain its reasoning. It does not demand instant obedience merely to protect its authority. Control uses panic, guilt, artificial urgency, or dependence. It says, you cannot hear clearly without me. Healthy counsel says, let us examine this carefully so you can act wisely. Say this aloud. I receive counsel, but I do not surrender responsibility. Good counsel does not make the decision for you. It helps remove the fog around the decision. It offers an external reality check while leaving you accountable for what you now understand. And when your motive has been exposed, the evidence has been examined, peace has been tested, and trustworthy counsel keeps pointing in the same direction, continued confusion may no longer mean that information is missing. It may mean that negotiation has begun. Here is the reversal. Sometimes you are not waiting for clarity. You are waiting for the evidence to change its testimony. You already saw the pattern. You already named the cost. You already received honest counsel. But because the answer threatens something you love, you call the delayed discernment. Be honest. Some confusion is not the absence of information. Some confusion is resistance to information. Watch the cycle. Pain drives you into prayer. Prayer calms you temporarily. Then the other person returns with affection, apology, urgency, or a promise. You restore access before change has been demonstrated. The old behavior returns, the pain returns, and now you ask God for another confirmation. You are not moving through a process. You are traveling around a circle. Ask yourself, do I reopen the question whenever loneliness becomes intense? Do I abandon what I learned whenever the other person becomes persuasive? Do I treat every emotional moment as new evidence, even when nothing in the pattern has materially changed? Missing someone does not invalidate what you discovered. Remembering a beautiful moment does not erase repeated harm. Grief is not proof that the decision was wrong. It may simply prove that the relationship mattered to you. You must distinguish an unresolved question from delayed obedience. An unresolved question lacks enough reliable information for responsible judgment. Delayed obedience has enough information but keeps demanding more because the known cost is painful. A court does not create a new case merely because the same appeal is filed again with louder emotion. Where is the new evidence? What has changed? Has accountability appeared? Has conduct become consistent? Has respect survived inconvenience? If nothing has changed except the intensity of your longing, then longing is not new evidence. And let us acknowledge the cost. Obedience may cost companionship. It may cost the future you pictured, the social identity you carried, and the comfort of saying, at least I have someone. It may force you to admit that years of investment cannot guarantee another person's character. It may require the burial of hope, not hope itself, but the specific hope that this person will become who they repeatedly promised to be. That is painful. But pain does not disqualify truth. A closed door is not always punishment. Restricted access is not always cruelty. Changed relationship terms may be protection, wisdom, or the necessary consequence of conduct. You do not have to call every ending a failure. Sometimes the failure would be returning unchanged to what truth already exposed. Say this directly. I will not ask another sign to contradict a pattern I refuse to face. Again, I will not use spiritual language to postpone responsible action. Now you can recognize the disguise. Avoidance can sound patient. Fear can sound compassionate. Delay can sound prayerful. But names do not change principles. Still, recognizing the answer intellectually is not surrender. Your mind may accept the evidence while your heart continues claiming ownership of one particular future. Surrender begins when that claim is released. Surrender is often misunderstood. People hear the word and imagine defeat. They think surrender means becoming numb, pretending the relationship meant nothing, or turning love into hatred so leaving will feel easier. That is not surrender. That is emotional escape. Surrender means releasing the demand that one person, one door, or one outcome must become the source of your future. It says, I may desire this, but I will not make my destiny depend upon it. Surrender does not deny love. It removes love from the throne. And surrender permits grief. You may need to grieve the relationship as it actually exists, the disappointments, the broken trust, the repeated distance. But you may also need to grieve the relationship you imagined, the future you planned, the version of the person you kept expecting, the promise that never became consistent conduct. Sometimes the hardest loss is not what you had. It is what you kept believing would arrive. Now write down 4 words: forgiveness, trust, access, reconciliation. These words are related, but they are not interchangeable. Forgiveness releases your claim to revenge. Trust is confidence built through demonstrated character. Access is permission to participate in your life. Reconciliation is the restoration of a relationship through truth and mutual responsibility. Forgiveness may be chosen by one person. Trust cannot be rebuilt by one person. Reconciliation cannot be manufactured by one person. If you forgive but the other person refuses accountability, forgiveness can free your heart while wisdom still restricts their access. Do you understand? A boundary is not hatred. It is a limit that protects what has been entrusted to you. You can wish someone healing without making yourself available for another cycle. You can pray for their future without offering your peace as the financing for their dysfunction. Compassion says, I will not become cruel. Wisdom says, I will not cooperate with what keeps causing harm. They belong together. Separation from an unhealthy pattern may therefore be stewardship. Stewardship means responsibly protecting what has been placed under your care, your identity, your peace, your purpose, and your capacity to form healthy relationships in the future. Staying is not automatically faithful, and leaving is not automatically failure. The governing question is whether your response agrees with truth and responsibility. Now speak this slowly. I release my demand for one preferred answer. I will not confuse love with control, forgiveness with access, or hope with denial. Show me what is true. Give me courage to face it, motives clean enough to accept it, and strength to obey it. I release the future I tried to guarantee, and I trust that truth will not destroy the purpose meant for me. That is surrender. It does not destroy your capacity to love. It prevents love from becoming self-abandonment. And now that the preferred verdict has been released, prayer can become honest, structured, and ready to produce responsible action. So let us build that prayer step by step. Here is the 5-part process. Do not treat it as magic language. Its power is not in reciting 5 phrases. Its value is in placing your heart under an honest discipline. First, confess desire. Name what you want without dressing it in respectable language. I want reconciliation. I want them to call. I want this relationship restored. Then name the fear beneath it. I fear being alone. I fear starting over. I fear admitting that this may not become what I imagined. Finally, confess the temptation. I am tempted to interpret everything in favor of the answer I prefer. Second, request truth. Ask for reality to become more important than chemistry, fantasy, history, or familiarity. Ask for hidden motives to be exposed, both theirs and yours. Truth is not your enemy. Truth is the condition that makes responsible freedom possible. Third, submit the record. Bring the evidence into prayer. What conduct has been consistent? Is responsibility accepted? What kind of character appears under pressure? What has this connection repeatedly produced in your identity, stability, and purpose? And if change is claimed, what credible evidence supports that claim over time? Fourth, test peace and counsel. Compare your emotional impressions with the facts. Compare them with your values. Compare them with the perspective of mature people who know the whole story, not the edited version. Then ask, what responsibility do I already understand but keep postponing? Fifth, commit to the next obedient action. You do not need the entire map to take one responsible step. The next step may be to wait. It may be to ask a direct question, establish a boundary, seek qualified help, decline contact, or proceed cautiously while observing conduct. Guidance becomes useful when it produces responsibility. Now pray. God, I bring you my desire without disguise. Show me what is true, including what I do not want to see. Give me courage without cruelty, wisdom without fear, and forgiveness without denial. Remove bitterness from my heart, but do not let emotion overrule truth. If the answer is different from the future I preferred, give me strength to accept it and obey the next responsible step. Now prepare a decision page. Use 5 headings: motive, evidence, peace, counsel, and next responsibility. Write beneath each one. Prayer should produce a clear record, not another emotional circle that begins again whenever the phone rings. And establish a review rule. Reconsider the decision when meaningful new evidence appears. Sustained accountability, consistent conduct, verified change, or relevant facts previously unknown. Do not reopen the case merely because loneliness increased, guilt returned, nostalgia became persuasive, or someone applied pressure. Prayer is not a mechanism for controlling another person's will. It prepares you to govern your own response. You cannot pray someone into character while excusing their choices, but you can pray yourself into honesty, courage, disciplined love, and wise action. Say it aloud. I do not need more emotion. I need truthful direction and an obedient response. That is the practice. Executable, repeatable, responsible. And the final proof of clear prayer is not how inspired you feel when you rise. It is what you are now willing to do. So now the question is no longer, what do I feel? The question is, what will I do with what truth has revealed? Gather the process one final time. Examine motive. Honor evidence. Test peace. Receive counsel. Obey responsibly. If you remove the last step, the other 4 become an impressive study with no governing power. Understanding that never reaches conduct is only information. Within the next day, choose one concrete action, not 10. 1. Do not reopen the entire emotional debate. Act upon the clearest responsibility already in front of you. Perhaps you need to document the pattern so emotion cannot rewrite history next week. Perhaps you need to pause contact long enough to regain perspective. Perhaps you must state a boundary plainly, without hostility and without a 40-page explanation. Some of you explain a boundary so long that you negotiate it away before the sentence ends. You may need mature or professional support. You may need to require sustained change before restoring access. Or the evidence may support cautious movement rather than complete separation. The action must be proportionate to the record, not exaggerated by panic and not weakened by attachment. And understand this, grief may continue after a wise decision. Doubt may visit. Longing may rise unexpectedly. You may remember the laughter and temporarily forget the cost. These feelings require processing, but they do not automatically require reversal. Emotion is a signal, not a command. You are no longer a person begging every new moment to provide reassurance. You are becoming a person capable of facing truth without becoming cruel, managing emotion without denying it, forgiving without abandoning wisdom, and setting boundaries without hatred. That is maturity. That is authority over your own response. Say this aloud. I can love without losing judgment. I can forgive without surrendering wisdom. I can feel deeply without giving emotion control of my future. And I can obey even when clarity closes the future I preferred. Again, because your heart must hear your conviction. I will not trade truth for temporary relief. The answer you did not want may still protect you. The door that does not reopen may create room for peace to return. The boundary that feels painful today may preserve your identity, strengthen your character, and prepare you to recognize healthier love tomorrow. You have not failed because you finally faced what attachment kept excusing. You have not stopped loving because you stopped cooperating with confusion. And you are not without a future because one imagined future had to be released. Prayer has done its work when it moves you from control to surrender, from fantasy to truth, and from endless signs to responsible obedience. The right answer is not merely the one your heart desires. It is the one truth can sustain.